Hello, welcome or welcome back to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela and all the places you can find me should be linked in the description box below this video. Here on the channel you'll find me chatting about my adventures in knitting, spinning, crochet and weaving, all of the fibre related things. Today's video is my April making roundup, so I'm going to be chatting about all of the things that I worked on during the month of April. There's quite a lot to get through this time. There's not a huge amount of finished objects. I think there's a couple of works in progress, but as well as the things that I had on my list, if you watched my April making plans, a few other things snuck on to my making list as well. So I've got some knitting, some spinning, some crochet, some needle felting to share with you in this video. And also at the end of April I went to Wonderwool Wales, which is the huge yarn festival, the main yarn festival that is held here in Wales every year where I live, and I've got some acquisitions to share with you at the end. I didn't take enough footage to justify a separate Wonderwool vlog this year. I just enjoyed spending the weekend there with my lovely friends, so I thought I'd just share with you what I purchased. And it wasn't a huge amount. I was fairly strict. I had a list and for the most part I stuck to the list. Also treated myself a few months ago now to a Indie Dyer yarn box, and that arrived in April as well, so I shall share the contents with you with that, and I'll do all the acquisition stuff at the end because I know some people like that stuff, some people are not so keen, so yeah, I'll pop all that at the very end of the video. Let's get started. I think I'll share needle felting first. That came up as a prompt from my little wheel of chance. I've got a selection of unfinished objects that are not knitting, not crochet for the most part, but they're fibre related in some way. There's quite a lot of hand stitching on there. There is a couple of kits that I've purchased in the past that have just been kind of sat around waiting. So yeah, there's a whole sort of muddle of stuff on that list. Each month I'm trying to pick one of those projects to work through. April, this little kit popped up, and this is a needle felted sheep bauble kit from the Felted Herdwick. And I had a look the other day, and the Felted Herdwick is on Etsy and they are still selling these kits. I purchased mine a couple of years ago, and you get enough in the kit to make 3 of these sheep baubles. If you work it as to the sort of pattern specifications, you get a instruction booklet as part of the kit. I'd previously made one of these and given it away, and so I wanted to work through the rest of the fibre in the kit. Now this time I decided to make my little sheep slightly smaller than given in the pattern directions, and so I have managed to make 3 more little Herdwick sheep baubles out of my kit. I've made 4 altogether, and I pretty much used all of the fibre that was in the kit. I have these tiny little bits left over, and that is it. I don't do much needle felting, so my sheep are a little bit wonky and the proportions probably aren't that great. I think a lot of the heads on my sheep are a little bit larger than they needed to be for the proportion of the body as I shrunk the bodies down, but here they are nonetheless. So wonky sheep number 1, wonky sheep number 2 oh dear, and wonky sheep number 3. But it was really fun to make these, to revisit needle felting again after so long. As I say, you can tell from these I'm by no means an expert. It's just a little bit of fun. My faces and my sheep heads are all a little bit wonky, but I think, you know, you can tell what they're meant to be, right? Hopefully. My plan is to keep one of these, and I will probably give the other 2 away at some point. The only thing that was missing from my kit when I revisited it was I didn't have any ribbon left, so who knows where the ribbon went from the kit. It was all provided in the kit, but I'm assuming it got separated from the box at some point. But I'm sure many of you out there will be the same, and you accumulate a bunch of stuff through your various crafting endeavours over the years, and I have tons and tons of ribbon hanging around, so I was able just to pull out some red ribbon from my crafting supplies, and I just popped that in lieu of the ribbon that was missing from the kit. So yeah, I did have a lot of fun. You know, needle felting is a good way to take out your frustrations, all the stabbing. And it's nice to actually finish off this kit and have some finished objects from this. I ended up having to purchase a few more needle felting needles. I think you got 2 or 3 in the kit, but over time my needles broke. So I managed just to get a cheap pack of needle felting needles. I'm sure there'll be a little bit more needle felting in my future. I think there's 2 more needle felting kits in my little sort of list of unfinished objects or kits that need some attention. So yeah, there will definitely be a little bit more needle felting. I don't think it's something that I will feel the need to do all of the time, but it's a little fun diversion, a little bit of a break from the knitting and the spinning, which mostly takes up my crafting time. Just a quick aside from editing Ange. I think editing Ange might pop up a few times in this video. But I did just want to mention that I also made my needle felted sheep as part of the Get Your Kit Off make along, which is being hosted by the lovely Anne Spar Knits on Instagram, the No Excuses Knitting podcast. She's hosting a make along where we try and dust off some of those kits that we've had hanging around. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that make along as well, in case anyone wanted to jump in and pull out a kit that they had hanging around and use that as an excuse to get something made. Next up, I've got a little bit of crochet to share with you. This is one of the things that hopped onto my list that wasn't really on my radar when I made my April making plans video. I've ended up crocheting from some very old stash yarn. This is going to form part of a video that I'm making as a specific video for my Patreon community. I post extra videos over for folks that support me that way, and there's always a link to Patreon below this video if you want to or are able to get involved in supporting that way. There's several tiers over on Patreon. The extra videos tend to be for folks who support at my shawl tier or above. There is a lower tier of just £1 a month, and for that you get all of my videos that go up here on YouTube, early access and free. There are several different tiers for different levels of support if you are interested. Anyway, that's a very long-winded intro to this crochet. So yes, I am starting a video that I'd hoped might be published by now, but I've got one more project to finish for that video. Hopefully that will be coming later in May for Patreons. But I had a little rummage through some of my yarn stash and I came across 4 cones or rolls of this fabric yarn that actually I purchased at the very first Wonderwool that I ever visited. And I've had several abortive attempts to make various projects with this yarn and never quite settled on anything. But this time I have made a couple of storage baskets. So maybe not the most exciting, but for me it's exciting because I'm using up this yarn that's been in my stash for a long time. My thought is I will be using these baskets up here in the craft attic to help organise all of my project bags with my works in progress. So this is basket number 1 that got finished. Very simple with a couple of handles. It's very flexible, so even if these baskets aren't in use I can just roll them up and tuck them away and they're not going to take up too much space. And then basket number 2, which just needs finishing off properly. Slightly shallower, slightly wider. I'm just kind of going with whatever size for these. Still got my row marker in there as well. The reason this one is a little bit more unfinished is because my little cat Newt, who is one of the most uncat-like cats that you'll ever meet, has done something very cat-like and seems to have claimed this basket. I don't know if she'll be cross that I've moved it. This last week we've had really warm weather here in the UK. Up here in the craft attic it gets very hot. It's very sort of greenhouse-like up here and she loves that. And we have come up here a couple of times and she has been snoozing in this basket. I think I got a picture or a video of it, so I'll try and pop that in. Very cat-like behaviour, but very unlike newt behaviour. So I'm just going to put this back in the same spot. It's quite cute that she's using it as a bed. You know that if I ever attempted to make her a cat bed that was specifically for her, she'd just sniff it, turn up her nose and wander off. But this little basket that's not really meant for her, she seems to have claimed. So yeah, I shall leave it out for as long as she wants to. She tends to have favourite places for a while and then gets bored with them and switches it up. So when she finally decides she doesn't want this anymore, I'll use it for the original intended purpose. 2 more rolls of this. I've got this one and a much darker blue, and I intend just to work through these baskets and use up this yarn. The bonus of doing this is that it's using up quite a lot of yarn out of my stash for my grams in, grams out total. One of those baskets is 650 grams, the other is 725 grams. So yeah, it's quite a lot of yarn that goes out in one go. Although having said that, I do have to work on these very slowly. So although I've finished 2 baskets, I literally only crochet 1 or 2 rows of those a day because it's very hard on my wrists. Obviously the fabric yarn is very thick. I'm using a 10mm crochet hook, and crochet is a bit hard on my wrist at the best of times. So yeah, I just have to be careful not to overdo it on the crochet. But I am determined to work through the other 2 rolls of this and get them out of my stash and into a useful object. So yeah, that was my crochet for April. Time for some spinning now. When I did my dice rolls for my April making plans, the make along prompt came up, and I decided to choose the Spin the Bin challenge, which is one of the make alongs I'm participating in this year, and it's being hosted by the Grumpy Sheep Happy Llama podcast. Lovely Sylvie and Robin who host that podcast. The idea is you just pick some fibre from your stash, create yourself a little fibre bin, and you spend some time spinning through your quantities of fibre. So I had a fairly slow start to this make along, but I'm happy to say that this month, having given myself permission to properly concentrate on this as one of my making focuses, I've managed to spin through 3 quantities of fibre from my bin. Or actually, let me qualify that, 2 and a bit. And I'll explain the bit in a minute. So first off, on my e-spinner, I have this skein, which was from some beautiful John Arbon fibre. I spun this on my e-spinner and I did a traditional 3-ply. It's from the John Arbon Harvest Hues fibre range. And I've ended up with 282 metres, and there's 102 grams of fibre. The one thing I will say about my spinning this month, I'm a little bit disappointed because all 3 of my spins are slightly over twisted compared to what I tend to spin now. And while it's not a huge problem, the reason you don't want to have your yarns to be too over twisted is that it can cause a bit of biasing when you go to work with them. What do I mean by being over twisted? Well, if I had a nice balanced yarn, when I hold up my heap of yarn, it should hang nice and straight. But these ones are having, and it's very difficult because I'm butting up against my ceiling here, but these are having like a tendency to twist round on themselves. This one is probably the best of the 3. There's only a slight twist to it. So I think I was hypercritical of it when I first took this off of the Niddy Noddy and soaked it. But I think, you know, going back with a slightly less critical eye, it's really not too bad. There are probably just parts of it that are slightly over twisted, and you can see here, perhaps if I can cover up my face, where it's kind of kinking back on itself a little bit. But in the scheme of things, it's not a bad skein of yarn. I mean, the fibre is absolutely beautiful, and any issues with the finished yarn is down to my spinning skills and nothing at all whatsoever to do with the beautiful John Arbon fibre. That was skein number 1 that got finished. Skein number 2, this one is severely over twisted. So this is some Blueface Leicester with nylon fibre that I spun from the fold on my support spindles. I had a battle with this fibre all the way through. I think it was to do with how the original braid had been blended. I bought this from an indie dyer, and I don't think the issues really came from that side of things. I think it was probably the fibre as it came to the dyer. This had a handwritten label on it which just said BFL nylon, no details of the quantities or the percentages. My guess would be this is the trilobal nylon, which is the super sort of sparkly kind of nylon, and there were just streaks of it all the way through the fibre, and as I was spinning the fibre from the fold, the nylon parts just kept drifting out of the rest of the fibre. So perhaps I chose the wrong way to spin this to start with, but I found that, yeah, it was just breaking quite a lot, and I was fighting with the fibre a fair amount as I was spinning it. But regardless, I still got through the spin and had some nice singles on my spindles. And then I decided to chain ply this, and my chain plies do tend to be a bit crunchier, a bit more twisted, because no matter how slow I seem to set my e-spinner, again I plied on my e-spinner, I can't seem to move my hands fast enough to meet with the sort of spin on my e-spinner. So this one is very over twisted in places. You can probably see it kinking up on itself. I haven't yet done the stats on this, so I don't know what my quantities are. Haven't really measured it. Look, there's a bit there that's completely curling back on itself. Now, I could put this back through the wheel and try and take some of the twist out. I don't know how well that works. I've never tried to do it with a chain plied yarn, because you're making the 3 plies by pulling through the loops. I'm not sure how effective popping it back through the wheel will be. Given that this is a BFL nylon and I'm most likely to knit it up into socks at some point, if the fabric does bias a bit, so if it slopes to one side or the other, it's probably not going to be a major issue for socks. I don't know, maybe some more experienced spinners out there might be able to let me know if it's a really bad idea to use over twisted yarn in socks, but I can't see what the issue would be. The higher twist in socks should mean, in theory, they'll be a little bit more durable, and if the fabric has a tend to bias, well, it's going to be on my feet and might be the end of the world. So yeah, I was a little bit disappointed with my spinning for that one. As I say, I haven't yet done the stats, but I would imagine just by eye it's probably my usual heavy fingering to light sport weight kind of 3-ply yarn. So those were the 2 sort of finished quantities of fibre from my spin the bin bin. Spin the bin bin. And once I finished those, I thought, oh, I'll have time to squeeze in one more. But this is where I came a cropper a little bit, because I pulled this one out of my bin, which I thought, when I'd originally picked it for my spin the bin, I thought this was a just grey merino fibre. But when I unravelled this, I found this tiny little label tucked away in the middle of my braid, and I found out it's actually the bio nylon, or the eco nylon, and so I knew I didn't want to spin through just a quantity of that on its own. In the end, I blended it up with another fibre from my stash, not my spin the bin, just a random quantity from my stash. I thought it'd be a fun experiment in blending this in to see if I could create a sock yarn. Now, the yarn in question, again, is over twisted. I'm so cross with myself. Don't know where my spinning is at this last month, but I don't have it up here with me. It's downstairs. Just had to go downstairs to answer the door. So I figured it'd be a good opportunity to grab my yarn from the bio nylon and the mystery fibre. So as you can see, I've already wound it up into 2 cakes, or that's really how I spun it up, and it is 75% mystery wool. This was some fibre that I was gifted by the lovely Zoe from Pins and Needles UK, and I blended it with 25% nylon, and I've got 2 skeins here that one's 29 grams, one's 28 grams, and they're approximately 80 metres, or one of them's 80 metres, one of them's 76 metres. 15 wraps per inch, which means they are, whoops, a sport weight. And I think I chain plied, yeah, chain plied, 3-ply. So yeah, my final spin for April, and partially from my Spin the Bin challenge box. So that leaves us with knitting for the making section of the vlog today. I've got 3 finished objects, although I've only got 2 of them here to share with you, and then I've got a bunch of works in progress to share as well. So first off, I finished my heptagon time shawl, and this is the project that I don't have at the moment to share with you. I was working on that as part of my March making plans, and I decided I was very close to finishing it, so I carried it through to April and cast it off. And it's currently waiting to be washed and blocked, so I don't have it in front of me. I figured you saw that in my last making roundup, and there will be a making vlog coming about it as soon as I manage to wash and block it and record the last segment. So I figured it wouldn't be too much of a problem if I didn't share it here, or at least I hope you won't mind. Actually, I've got 3 more finished objects to share with you. They all technically come under the Not For Me prompt, which was one of the prompts that the dice picked for me last month. And I had one official project for that prompt, and then a couple of days after I recorded my April making plans video, a lovely friend of mine at work asked if I would knit a pair of socks for her mother, and her mum used to work with us at my day job, and I knit a few pairs of socks for her in the past. And so her daughter asked me, could I knit a pair of socks for mum for her birthday, which is coming up. And so I try to avoid knitting socks for too many people that are like what I would call acquaintances rather than friends, but this particular work colleague, who has now left us, was very supportive and very helpful when I first started at my job. So I had agreed to knit her a couple of pairs of socks, and so yeah, she's probably one of the few people, if maybe the only person at work, that I would knit for. Anyway, these are the socks that I knit to gift to Lana for her birthday. Her daughter just gave me the brief of please can you include yellow and lilac if you can, because they're her favourite colours. So I found this lovely skein of opal yarn, and this is from the Opal Merino line, which is a new-ish line of yarn that they have, which is a lot softer than the usual opal that we expect to see, because it is made from merino yarn rather than their usual, which I think is just classed as virgin wool. I had this in the YarnNYarns shop. I have one more ball of this, I think, and some various other colours in this base if you fancy trying it for yourself. As I say, it's a lot softer than the usual opal line, but I figured this fit the bill because it had both yellow and the lilac in. Very Easter-like, very spring-like, so I hope she will enjoy those. And for her, I just knit a 3x1 rib. I don't really follow a pattern, and this time I put in a modified Eye of Partridge heel in a contrast from West Yorkshire Spinners. I had some yarn left over after knitting those socks, and I know that her daughter, really has a soft spot for gnomes, so I figured, you know what, I could make a gnome from the leftovers. So I quickly whipped that up, and technically this is my first finished object for May, because I cast it on the 30th of April and cast it off on the 1st of May, but I want to hand this package over, so I figured I would show you, as it's a couple of days into May as I'm recording this, I figured I could just show you this one now. Use the Never Not Gnoming pattern, which is like the basic gnome pattern from Imagined Landscapes or Sarah Shearer. This is the large size gnome. And my final finished object is actually the project that was officially my project that I picked for the Not For Me prompt, and it's the Cape Point hat, which is a pattern by Sally Jane Cameron. I picked a bunch of yarns from my stash, my leftovers basket for this hat. and it was one of the oldest hat patterns that I had in my Ravelry library that I hadn't yet knit. I ran into a couple of issues with this pattern, and I'm not sure how this turned out to be. Obviously I wasn't using the yarn that was recommended in the pattern, but the pattern suggested one 20-gram mini, which was meant to be for the rib and the top of the hat, and then several 10-gram minis. So that's what I picked out of my stash. But as you can probably tell, my 20-gram mini did not, by any stretch of the imagination, get me anywhere near finishing the crown of this hat. So I don't know if my gauge is wildly different. I did not gauge swatch. It's just a hat. It's not for me. It's going into my charity knits pile. But yeah, I ran out of yarn with quite some significant amount of knitting left to go. But with the mini skeins, the 10-gram minis that I wound off, I didn't use all of them. I ended up just striping in some others to finish the crown of the hat. I probably could have done a better job choosing my colours for this. So in the original design, you can very clearly see the distinction between the, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4 mini skeins, 5 mini skeins. 5 mini skeins that you use in this, but my colours were so similar. You can tell I've used a few different yarns, but the sort of chevron stripes don't come across as dramatically as in the original pattern design. It turned out quite a big hat, or at least big on me. I think this was the adult medium, so I'm imagining my gauge must have been quite a bit looser than the original pattern design, and that's probably why I've ended up running out of yarn as well. I'm not going to put it on because I've got like a bun on top of my head, which is always tricky for trying on hats. But I found that actually the fit for me was quite a nice close beanie if I folded the rib up, which does mean you lose a little bit of the chevron design at the start. But yeah, hopefully someone will enjoy wearing that wherever it ends up. And this is also another project for our YarnNYarns scrap make along. Plan to do an update video for that soon, so you might see this project popping up again for that video. So this year in the YarnNYarns community, I'm hosting a scrap make along. So we're using the hashtag YNY_ScrapMail2025 on Instagram, and there's a thread in the Ravelry group for sharing finished objects as well. And the idea is just to use any amount of scraps from your leftovers basket to incorporate into a project. So it could be entirely scrappy, or you could just be using one mini skein as part of your project, and it will all count for that make along, and that will be going on for the rest of 2025. So if you fancy joining in one of our make alongs, it's definitely not too late to participate in that one. So works in progress. First up, the community pick last month was made by Connie, and Connie chose the 3 Seasons pullover for me to work on. This is a design by Wool & Pine, and I made quite a good amount of progress. Again, it's going to be quite tricky to share this with you, but last time, so my marker up here showed where I was last time, and when I picked this up, I'd knit the back panel and the first part of one side of the front, and then of course I had to knit down to the bottom of the V. This is a V-neck on one side, and then I picked up the stitches and knit down the second side of that V, and I'm now working my way down the body. So I wish I was stood in a slightly different place. Let me switch the camera around slightly so I can hold this up. So yeah, you can hopefully see the progress that I've made with that, and I've now got to knit down. I've only got a couple more inches left to knit until the front piece is as long as the back. Yeah, I can't even tell you how much I am enjoying this pattern. I just love it. Cables lace, my favourite colour. Yeah. I was kind of sad to get to the end of the month and to put this away. So even though I've been working on it for 2 months, which is a long time in my world for working on one project, I'm definitely not tired of this one yet. So I hope that I can get back to it sooner rather than later. Dropping the stitches off my needles, which is never good, is it? So yeah, that is the 3 Seasons by Wool & Pine. I'm getting very close to the point with this one where I need to decide whether I'm gonna buy some extra yarn. So if you've followed this project from the beginning, you may remember that for my size, the size that I'm knitting, I really needed 13 balls of the yarn that I've used, which is Venezia by Mayflower. And when I went to order it off of the website where I found it, they only had 12 balls in the colour, so I ordered the 12. My plan was to either go back and order another one, and if it came and it was a significantly different dye lot, I could use it for the rib bands and stuff like that. Or if I couldn't get any more of the orange, to go for a contrasting colour to knit the rib bands. I had a look the other day and they do actually have this colour back in stock now. So yeah, I need to make a decision soon as to whether, one, I feel like I need that extra ball, and two, whether I'm going to go for a contrast colour or stick with the orange. I think I'm probably going to stick to the orange as they've got it back in stock. But yeah, next time I pick this up, that will probably be one of the first decisions that I have to make. Next up, I worked on my Shift cowl, which is a pattern by Andrea Mowry. And I didn't get as far on this as I anticipated that I might, because of the aforementioned heptagon time shawl. As I was so close to finishing that one, I decided, because they were both hand-spun projects, that one and this one, that I wouldn't pick this one up until I finished the heptagon time. And then of course I procrastinated on finishing the heptagon time. So I made a little bit more progress on my Shift, but I kind of hoped that I might finish this. The marker shows where I was when I picked this up, so here, and so I managed to add a few inches to this. And I don't know if you remember, but all the way through me making this was one of my 12 cast on projects, I was very concerned about two of my colours that I'd picked, so there are 3 colours in this altogether, not being contrasty enough, and I was very concerned that when I got to that section I might end up disliking this project or needing to substitute in a different kind of yarn. But here I am knitting with the 2 yarns that I was concerned about. I've only done a few rows with them, but there's plenty of contrast between them, so I do not know what I was making such a big fuss about. So yes, the Shift is still in progress. I've got another, I think, 2.5 sections left before it's finished. It shouldn't take up too much time in terms of knitting time when I get back to this. But it's just a joy to work on. There's always just something really lovely, really joyful, really special about working with yarn that you've spun yourself. These are my 3 colours. I picked that project for the accessory prompt which came up when I did my dice rolls for April. Final knitting work in progress, and this was for the YouTube picks prompt. So if you watched my April making plans video, I asked the folks that watch to pick between 2 of my works in progress, and I popped up a choice between the Elton and the Raya, and oh my goodness, the vote was so close. There were literally 2 votes in it. I felt really bad for picking one project over the other, but those are the rules of the game. And if you followed my Instagram, you might have already seen me working on the Elton during April. And I'm happy to report that even though this is very fine yarn, I managed to make quite a significant amount of progress. And of course the mohair has been all grabby in the project bag and is tangling up on itself. But here is my Elton so far, and it's although there's a long way to go, it is significantly further on than when I picked it up at the beginning of the month. When I picked it up at the beginning of the month, I had one little strip knit. So from here to where my little slice of pumpkin pie marker is, I had that knit flat. Of course, since then, I knit down the back, I picked up at the shoulders and have knit down the front, and I've joined to work in the round. Managed to knit a couple of inches of the body now. So yeah, a lot of progress on this. This represents a lot of knitting time, but I've been having a lot of fun with this. I'm still slightly on the fence about how me it is, because it is quite light with that beautiful sort of greyish mohair that I've popped in. It's, yeah, a very subtle sort of silvery grey. I was working on this while I was away at Wonderwool with my lovely group of friends. We stayed for the whole weekend, and I mentioned to them, and I think most of them thought it was a good idea, that what I might do is when it comes to picking up for the ribbing on this, I might go with a solid colour, a brighter colour. So my main yarn, or the speckly yarn I should say, they're both main, you know, they're striped, so there's not really much more of one than the other. But the speckly indie dyed yarn is from Caroline of Colourful Creativity, and it's in her Coral Reef colourway, and there's loads of speckles of orange, yellow and purple in this. And I've got a set of Caroline's mini skeins, and I think I might do a solid colour, so I might put, I don't know, say purple round the neckband, and then orange on the sleeves, and then yellow on the bottom, for instance. Actually, I've got a sock set here of the Coral Reef colourway with a solid yellow mini skein. So this is what I mean. I've got a set of Caroline's minis. So yeah, that might be the way that I go to finish this off, to maybe slightly brighten it up a little bit and make it a little bit more me, but we'll see. It's so light and airy, and I think it might end up surprising me, like one of those ones that you're not sure how well it will suit you. Sometimes those projects turn into the ones that you wear the most, so we'll see. We shall see. I'm really enjoying knitting it, and I know that I will wear it. It's just, yeah, I don't know how quote unquote me it's looking with that sort of pale grey mohair, but it's nice and spring-like. Loved knitting on it during April. As I say, just so light and fluffy. I haven't yet used a full skein of the indie dyed yarn, which is 100 grams, and neither have I quite used a full skein of mohair, which is 25 grams. So yeah, I guess possibly approaching 100 grams worth of yarn all told knit up into this so far. So it's going to be really light and lovely to wear. And I don't know if I mentioned, it's the Elton by Johi Locatelli. So thank you to everyone who left a comment on the making plans video for April and voted. I felt a little bit bad that one of the projects had to lose because the vote was so close, but hopefully I will get back to this and to the Raya, which was the other one in the vote, sooner rather than later, because they're both lovely projects, and it'll be nice to add these to my rotation to wear. I can't stop stroking this, can I? So lovely and soft. Finally, it's on to acquisitions. So if you are not interested in that, then I appreciate the time that you've spent with me, and hopefully I shall see you next time. But if you are here for the new goodies, then I've got first some yarn from Beehive Yarns to share with you. As you know, I'm trying to use more yarn than I bring into my stash, and I've been trying to do this for the last couple of years. It's not often that I splurge on something new, and particularly I'm trying not to buy too much superwash, merino, nylon, indie dyed, that kind of yarn, because I've got a lot of that in my stash. However, there are occasions where you just can't help yourself, right? And I got tagged by several people, including the lovely Penny and my friend Ruth, in a post from Beehive Yarns. I've never used Beehive Yarns before. They were putting together a box of yarn based around my all-time favourite book, which is The Secret Garden, and I just could not resist. There were lots of goodies in the box, including this gorgeous edition of the book, which I don't have, and I do collect editions of The Secret Garden. I've got quite a few in my collection now. I reread this book at least once every year. It's been my favourite book since childhood, and this is the Wordsworth edition, and I've seen this in a few different bookshops and I've almost picked it up, but I guess fate was telling me not to pick it up, because one day it'll be part of a yarn and bookish box. So yeah, I'm not going to share all of the goodies that were in the box. I do have a short unboxing video which I have shared for all of my Patreons, so if you're interested then that's over there. But the main event, of course, in these are the yarns, and how gorgeous are these. There were a few different options for the box, but I decided if I was going to splurge, I might as well splurge. So yeah, I went for the 3 full skeins. And so this colourway is called The Whole World is a Garden, and it's like one of my most favourite sort of sludgy green colours, which doesn't make it sound very attractive, but it's absolutely stunning. This is on the Audrey base, which is 75% superwash merino and nylon. The second skein is The Secret Garden, with some more of those green tones, but also purple, pink, almost like a corally sort of pinky orange in there too. Gorgeous. And then the final skein is called Everything is Made Out of Magic, and it's this deep burgundy red, which is another perfect colour. I would love a sweater quantity in this colour. Oh, just stunning. One thing I will say that I loved about this box was it came with a little leaflet with some pattern suggestions for what you might want to use your 3 skeins for. Yeah, that was a lovely idea, I thought. But these will live in my stash and be admired for a little while till the perfect project comes along. If you have any suggestions, I would love to know, either using these yarns in combination or separately. I don't really mind. I don't have a particular thought or idea of how I want to use them. But yeah, let me know in the comments below if you're looking at these and a particular pattern is screaming its name at you. Please scream it at me in the comments box. Oh, they're just so lovely, aren't they? So yeah, I was very, very happy indeed that I took the plunge and splurged and bought this box. So thank you to everyone who tagged me and let me know that this was happening, because I don't follow a lot of indie dyers anymore just because I try to avoid the temptation. But every now and then something comes along that's just perfect, and this had my name written all over it. My wrap up from Wonderwool. I had such an amazing weekend. I stayed over for several nights in the Wonderwool Wales area with a lovely group of friends, and it was just so nice to visit the show on both days. It felt a little bit more relaxed, didn't have to rush around everywhere. Got to spend some time with some lovely folks. So I did have a little bit of a coffee and cake meetup with Angela from Attic Spin Dye, Anne from No Excuses Knitting or Spa Knits, Anita from Gaga Knits, some additional friends as well. I also want to say a huge thank you to anyone who's watching that came up and said hello to me over the weekend. There were quite a few of you, and it was just so joyful to meet a few faces behind the people that watch and comment here on the channel. Yeah, I did say beforehand, please don't be afraid to come up and say hello. And you know, honestly, you made my weekend by coming up to say hello and let me know that you watch. I tried to go to Wonderwool this year. I mean, my main aim was to hang out with the group of friends that I was staying with and then hopefully meet a few people. I didn't make any concrete plans to meet people. It was just a case of I will see you if I bump into you, just to make it a little bit more relaxed for me than it had been the last few visits to Wonderwool. I went with a shopping list because, you know, I don't really need anything, but I knew that it was very unlikely that I'd go to a massive fibre festival and not come home with something, so I thought I might as well make a list and go with a plan rather than purchase things willy-nilly, and I mostly stuck to that. I think I've got 2 somewhat frivolous but not really purchases. The first one, I came home with a fleece, and I don't have that up here with me, it's downstairs waiting to be washed. And this was kind of on my list because if you've been following for a while, you might remember that last year I had a little bit of a moth issue in one of the corners of this room, and a fleece that I'd bought previously had become moth infested. Originally I was thinking about purchasing another fleece from Fernhill Fibre, which is the fleece that got destroyed. But I was wandering around the show and they did have some lovely fleeces at Fernhill, but of course there were lots of other vendors that had fleeces as well. I'd kind of talked myself out of the idea on Saturday, and then while we were hanging out on Saturday evening, we were trying to encourage my lovely friend Ruth to buy a fleece. And Ruth said, if I buy a fleece, then you have to buy one. So I came home with a Shetland fleece, and I'll pop a little bit of video footage of it. So that was one of my purchases. Other fibre purchases. From Wild Welsh Wool, I bought this little bag of fibre just to try out. It's unwashed, it's 100 grams, so I do need to prep it. And I've asked several people how you pronounce this breed and it doesn't want to stick into my head. And I think it's Llen, but I might be wrong. L-L-E-Y-N. So yeah, 100 grams cost me £3. And this is what the fleece looks like. Let me just get one lock out. It's a really fun sort of square lock with a little bit of crimp in it. So I'm looking forward to washing that up and spinning it out. A new to me breed to try. And then the second fibre purchase, so the clean and this, and to a certain extent the fleece, were kind of frivolous purchases. But I've got this pile of gorgeousness. It looks like a lot, it's 200 grams. It's just super bouncy and full, and it's some sliver that has been mill prepared. The sheep is called Cedric and he is part of a flock that's really local to me. They're called Kenexton sheep. I've known the lovely Jane, who is the shepherd, for quite some number of years. She was telling me about Cedric and showed me a video of one of his adventures, and I couldn't resist but come home with a couple of 100 grams of Cedric to spin up. And Jane also showed me a bobbin that she'd been spinning with Cedric's fibre on from this, and it just spins up into such a beautiful natural colour. So yeah, that persuaded me to get 200 grams. I was just going to get 100 grams as a sort of souvenir, but then I thought, oh, let's just get 200 and then I'll have a bit more of something to do something with. So soft and squishy. This is probably going to be my first project for my Wonderwool onto the spinning wheel. Before I get into yarn purchases, I just want to share this amazing gift that I was given, and I didn't chat to her beforehand, but I've spoken about gifts that the lovely Angela from Attic Spin Dye has given me in the past, so I hope she doesn't mind. But yeah, I went to their stand on Saturday and just to try and check in with them and to try and make some arrangements to properly sit with Angela, because we have been friends online. They've been, Andy and Angela have both been very supportive of my channel in the past, providing me with lovely surprise gifts and also prizes for our prize pot and stuff like that. So I always like to try and catch up with them, but I never seem to have much time to spend with them. So I wanted to try and make sure that I got to properly sit down and spend some time with Angela at this show, as I was going to be there for 2 days. And she said, oh, I've got a gift for you. And so I unwrapped it and I was oohing and ahhing over this gorgeous project bag, and she said to me, oh, there's some little goodies inside. So I was having a little poke around inside. There's some delicious chocolate, which I'm surprised that I haven't yet tucked into, and I'm sure I will now that I've showed you. There's also this gorgeous wooden heart keyring, which I'm going to add to my door key now that I've showed that off. Also some lovely honey soap. Oh, it smells absolutely delicious. That's going to go straight into my bathroom. So I was oohing and ahhing over this stuff, and Andy came up behind me and he said, you're looking at the wrong side of the project bag. Turn it over. I mean, how stunning is that? All hand embroidered by Angela. Oh my god, I was just blown away. I had to make a relatively swift exit from the stand after that so I didn't blub all over them. But I mean, just wow. Have you ever seen a more beautiful project bag? I certainly haven't. So yeah, I'm getting a bit choked up again now. Thank you so much to Angela for making this. I know and appreciate how much time and effort goes into stitching something like this. So it will always be treasured. I said I was going to share my yarn next, but I got a few other little bits and pieces, so I'll share those first. The thing that I purchased from Attic Spin Dye, I didn't buy any yarn this time, but I've been very curious for a while to try one of these yarn holders, which are like a loop for your wrist. I'm trying to hold this very delicately because it's in crinkly packaging. I don't know if I'm ever going to be a knitter that wants to walk around with, you know, yarn hanging off my wrist so I can knit as I'm on the go. But what I was curious about was potentially using one of these for when I'm out and about knitting and I don't want my yarn to roll away. Because there's been times where I've been sat on my local beach with my yarn around me and then all of a sudden my yarn has gone running off down the beach. So I thought about using this almost as a sort of portable yarn bowl or yarn holder. So I purchased this one, which has this beautiful cat's design on it. So yeah, there's a lovely wrist strap and then the sort of piece that goes through the centre there. and I shall try to remember to report back and let you know how useful I find it. I purchased myself a new pair of my favourite sock knitting needles, some Chalgoos. Probably not the most exciting purchase, but a lot of my needles are now several or more years old, and a few of my sock needles need replacing, and these Chalgoo red lace steel needles are my favourite for sock knitting. They're not the cheapest of needles, but I knit socks all the time, so I use them all the time, so I decided to add another pair of those to my needle collection. I also couldn't resist coming home with a pattern from Sincerely Louise. Their stand was amazing, and they do these kind of like faux taxidermy patterns as well as other things. I just had to buy this moose head. If you've watched for a while, you know I have this weird obsession with moose, and I can definitely see like a moose mounted on my orange wall back here, so there will be one of those in my future, and I think these lovely natural colours will be perfect for handspun yarn. I was kind of on the fence about whether to purchase this because it is a little bit frivolous and I don't know when I'll get to knit it, but I just couldn't resist. I knew, even though I was trying to talk myself out of it, I knew that this would come home with me. And then potentially one of my favourite purchases of the show was from Cat and Sparrow. I didn't fall down the fibre rabbit hole. They have some lovely fibre, but they do always have some beautiful Turkish 3D printed spindles. I've bought from them before because they sell the turtle made ones, but she also had these from another producer that she said produces them specifically for her, and I had to come home with this miniature. I mean, look how tiny that is. I had a little play with it on the stand, and it basically, it spins thread. It spins really fast and really fine. How often I will actually use this, I don't know, but I just had to have it for my spindle collection. Is that not just the cutest thing you ever did see? On day 2, I had to go back and buy the larger version because the lovely Rachel had let me spindle with a couple of these on the stand on Saturday. So yeah, I went back to buy the large version, which will certainly get lots of use. But look at those side by side, that's just so teeny. Those were my spindle purchases from Cat and Sparrow. That is all of the bits and pieces, so now it's definitely time to share my yarn purchases. Went with my list, as I say, and one of the things on my list was a mini skein in red yarn to finish off the red section of the northeasterly blanket that I'm working on. I've mentioned this in a few videos before, but I'm working the northeasterly pattern and I'm doing 2 stripes of each colour, and I'm working them in the pride flag colours, and I've almost finished the red 2 stripes, but I'd run out of yarn to use for that, and I don't necessarily want to purchase a lot of yarn for this blanket. The idea is to use mostly leftovers from previous projects or future projects. It's going to be a long-term work in progress, that blanket, but I only had one little bit left to go, so I figured it would be fun to purchase a red mini. Were quite a few stands selling mini skeins. None of them were really jumping out at me, so in the end I was just determined to buy a red mini skein, so this is what I got. Pixie Yarn was the dyer of the red mini skein. I was also on the lookout for some yellow sock yarn. If you've been following along this year, you'll know that I am participating in Kelly from Roro and Cade's, her 12 Cozy Toes knit along, which is going to be running through this year and next year. I'm trying to knit a few pairs of socks this year in predominantly yellow colours so that I can donate them to the Flower Power Fund. And so I thought I'd have a look. Oftentimes at these shows, dyers, producers will have like a sale basket or a seconds basket. And I figured I didn't necessarily want to spend, £20 plus on a skein of yarn for socks that I'm going to give away. But I figured if I spotted anything in a sale basket, then I would grab something. So I found this from the Weaver's Loft, and it is superwash merino nylon, 75/25, standard kind of sock weight, sock base. It doesn't have a colourway, but yeah, all sorts of tones of yellow, so I was happy to pick that up, and that cost me £11, which is not that much more than you pay for a lot of the commercial produced sock yarn now. I was happy to grab that. That was my first purchase of my Wonderwool weekend, and pretty much I think like the second stand that I went to. But it was something that was on my list and I was happy to grab that. So I shall look forward to seeing which of Kelly's patterns come up in the next few months that I can be using this yarn for. On my list I also had a potential project, so I wanted to look out for some yarns for knitting a Maywick sweater, which is in, what book is it in? Shetland Trader, I think. One of the Shetland Trader books. I've got the book around here somewhere. Bear with, I shall grab it. This is the book. It was a Pom Pom Press publication. I think it's available digitally, although I don't know if they've got any pattern like hard copies left. But in here is a pattern called Maywick, if I can find it. It's a sort of a chevron pattern, and I really love this second colourway that they had. I've got some grey and some orange yarn from Cambrian, which is a Welsh produced yarn. I worked out I'd need about 100 grams of each colour to knit that top in my size. So I figured if I could find a brown and a blue, then I could add that to what's already in my stash, ready for a Maywick at some point in the future. Won't be yet. Maybe a birthday cast on in August for me, or maybe it will be a 12 cast on for next year. I went along to the Cambrian stand because two of my colours were in Cambrian, and I found a suitable blue which I was really happy with. I had in the back of my head that I didn't think they did a dark brown, and it turns out that I was right, so I was hoping to get all Cambrian. I did get a shade card from them. They very kindly just gave me a shade card. I do have some beautiful colours. So I have got this sort of grey colour, which is called Kegan, C-E-G-I-N. I'm sure that's probably not how it's pronounced, but there we go. And I have a very similar colour, though it's not quite, this Ironstone Orange. So along with the blue, which is called Hafan. So then I was on the lookout for a nice deep brown colour. There were several possibilities as I went round, but none of them were quite right. None of them were quite similarly plied, shall we say, to this yarn. And I figured if I couldn't find anything, I would just buy some Spindrift or something like that in a dark brown. However, I needn't have feared, and I should have done this straight off. I went to the lovely Helen of Nellie and Eve. Went to her stand. I always love popping by her stand. She has some beautiful Welsh produced fibres and yarns. On her stand, she had the Dales base, which is, well, it's called Dales 50/50. It's 100% British wool, 50% BFL and 50% Masham, in this beautiful perfect brown. So that will be my fourth colour for the Maywick when I get to it. I can show you my other colours because they're right behind me. Are what I already had in my stash, this lovely silver grey. This one, which I bought out of a sale bucket, I think this 200 grams cost me 15 quid, which is just amazing for pure wool yarn. But I think this was like from a discontinued dye lot or the end of a dye run. And I picked that up at Wonderwool quite a few years ago. So yeah, these will all go into a Maywick at some point in the future. I'm very excited about that project. And then one final purchase, and this one was frivolous. It wasn't on my list, but I just couldn't resist. I had a visit to Floof Fibres and I bought this skein of DK yarn. It is Merino Nylon 80/20. And I figured I could make myself a pair of double knit socks potentially. I haven't made myself double knit socks for ages, other than my handspun, which sometimes verges on double knit, mostly sport weight though. And I just couldn't resist. They were having a little sale on the second day on this yarn, and this is the Boo colourway, orange and grey, one of my favourite combos. And this is one of those light reactive dyes where you shine a light on it and it glows. I don't know if it will work in this light, but the very helpful chap on the stand gave me, oh yes, you can see how glowy that is, gave me one of these torches so that I could play around with this. So yeah, very reflective, very reactive, and we were chuckling. There were quite a few people who bought, that I met up, had bought yarns both from this dye and from others in this similar kind of light reactive base. So I think at some point we should have a knitters club night where we can all wear our glowy knits. Fleece Fibres, Boo colourway, double knit. That was my one thing that wasn't on my list, but I just couldn't resist, you know. I've been pretty good, especially compared to previous Wonderwools. Stuck to my list for the most part. And so, one frivolous purchase is not too bad, is it? Right, that is everything. I think this is going to be quite a long episode with all of that acquisition stuff at the end. So thank you so much for sticking with me if you have. Please let me know in the comments below what you have been working on in the last few weeks. Have you finished anything? What is currently making your heart happy? What's your favourite project that you're working on at the moment? Did you visit Wonderwool, or have you been to any other Fibre shows in your local area? And if you did, what came home with you? I would love to see or to hear about your purchases, your frivolous purchases or your very controlled, were definitely on your list purchases. Either way, it all makes me happy to hear about. So yeah, please leave those comments below. I will of course be back again soon with some more making content, so I hope you will join me for the next video. But until we do get to spend time together again, I hope you get to do some other things that you enjoy. Great big woolly hugs to you all. Bye for now. Bye.